Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be taking a look at some of the controversies surrounding President-elect Trump's cabinet picks and a new bathroom rule in the House of Representatives.
Sounds like it's going to be a busy one.
Yeah, we've got some great reporting here from NBC Nightly News. We're going to be looking at their segments, so this should be interesting to get their take and see what we can glean from this.
Definitely.
So let's jump right in. The big news this week is, of course, Matt Gaetz. Former Florida Congressman Trump has nominated him to be the new Attorney General.
A controversial pick, to say the least.
I was going to say, that's definitely ruffling some feathers.
Yeah, he's got that very strong personality, and he's also facing those allegations of sexual misconduct.
Right. And of course, he denies them.
He does. But that's not stopping it from becoming a real problem for some Republican senators. Trump is really pushing for this nomination. He's putting a lot of pressure on them to confirm Gaetz. He even sent Vice President-elect J.D. Vance to Capitol Hill for some closed-door meetings, trying to get those votes.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty aggressive, isn't it, for Trump to be doing that kind of lobbying?
Yeah. It is, but, it's Trump, so...
I guess so.
And then, of course, there's this House Ethics Committee report. It really gets into the details of these allegations against Gaetz.
Yeah, that report's kind of at the center of this whole debate, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's this big question of whether it should be released or not. Some Republicans are really pushing against it. Senator Lindsey Graham even called it a political tactic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's saying it's like a lynch mob tactic to release this report.
That's some pretty strong language.
It is, but, at the same time, you've got this group of senators from both parties who are saying, hey, we want to see this report before we even consider voting on his confirmation. We need transparency. We need to know what's in there to do a thorough vetting process.
It makes sense that they would want that information before making such a big decision.
Oh, absolutely.
It seems like that report has become a real political football.
Oh, huge. And to make matters worse, they're delaying its release, which just adds to the speculation.
So much for transparency.
Yeah, it does make you wonder what they're trying to hide.
Right. And then you have Senator Susan Collins. She said she was, quote, shocked by Gaetz's nomination.
I mean, that says a lot coming from her.
Right. She's known for being very careful and willing to break with her party when she feels it's necessary. So for her to come out and say she was shocked, that really underscores the seriousness of these allegations and the level of discomfort that even some Republicans are feeling about this pick.
Definitely. I mean, this goes way beyond party lines. It's about whether someone facing these kinds of accusations is fit to be the nation's top law enforcement officer,
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder, why is Trump so insistent on Gaetz specifically for this role?
Right. I mean, why him,
Yeah, the Democratic strategist Alicia Cross, she had an interesting take on this. She suggested that maybe Trump is so gung-ho about Gaetz because he wants to make sure he has a loyal ally in the Justice Department, someone who will be in line with his agenda.
I mean, that would make sense. He's picking someone who would be loyal to him.
Right. And then we have Carlos Curbelo. He's the former Republican congressman who's now an NBC News political analyst. He thinks that Gaetz actually doesn't have enough votes for confirmation right now, and that eventually the report is going to come out because of the pressure from both sides.
Interesting.
Yeah, and he's even predicting that if enough Republicans end up opposing Gaetz, Trump's either going to have to withdraw the nomination or Gaetz himself is going to have to bow out to avoid a really embarrassing defeat.
Yeah, that would be a major blow for Trump so early in his presidency.
Definitely a sign that even though he won the election, he can't just push through these controversial picks without any consequences.
Right, he's going to have to face some pushback.
Absolutely. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about Trump's choice for Secretary of Defense, Pete Buttigieg, another interesting pick that's getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, this one's causing a different kind of stir.
Right. It's not so much about allegations or scandals this time, but more about his qualifications and experience.
And his leadership.
Exactly. NBC's Pentagon correspondent, Courtney Kube, she spoke with some senior military sources, and they're raising some questions about Buttigieg's leadership, especially during his time in the National Guard.
They must not have been impressed.
Apparently not. They seem to have concerns about his lack of experience for such a critical role.
Understandably.
And get this, the Trump transition team is apparently already searching for a strong deputy, someone with a lot of military experience to essentially help stabilize a potential Buttigieg-led Defense Department.
Wow, so they're already anticipating problems.
It seems that way. It's like they're trying to get ahead of any potential issues before they even arise.
That's not very reassuring.
Not really. And then you have Alicia Cross again. She sees Buttigieg's nomination as part of Trump's bigger strategy of kind of fueling these culture wars.
How so?
Well, she argues that Trump might use Buttigieg's high profile in his personal life to further that agenda. She also criticizes Buddy Gaetz' stance on women in combat, specifically contrasting it with Senator Tammy Duckworth, who lost her legs while serving in Iraq.
Yes. It sounds like she thinks Trump is prioritizing political maneuvering over actual qualifications and experience when it comes to choosing people for these important roles.
Yeah, it's a bold accusation, but it does kind of fit with the concerns about Trump's motives that we were talking about earlier with the Gaetz nomination.
It's like he's picking people who will further his agenda rather than focusing on who's actually the most qualified for the job.
Right. It's definitely something to watch closely. Now let's move on to another drama that's unfolding this time in the House of Representatives, and this one's all about bathroom access.
Bathroom access? What's going on there?
Well, it seems to be directly targeting Sarah McBride, who you might remember is the first transgender woman ever elected to Congress.
Oh, wow. So this is a big deal then.
Yeah, definitely. It's raising questions about inclusivity and representation in government, and it's attracting a lot of attention because it seems like a deliberate effort to single out McBride.
That's not a good look.
Not at all. So leading the charge for this new bathroom rule is Representative Nancy Mace. She's advocating for a ban on transgender women using women's restrooms in the House.
Wow, that's a pretty extreme measure.
It is, and it's causing a lot of controversy. Some people are saying it's necessary to protect women's privacy and safety, while others are arguing that it's discriminatory and harmful to transgender individuals.
That's a tough situation.
It is House Speaker Mike Johnson. He's trying to walk a fine line here. He announced these new rules regarding bathroom use, but he also made a point of saying that everyone should be treated with respect.
That's a tricky balancing act.
For sure. It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. It seems like we're in for some pretty big changes in Washington with Trump at the helm.
It definitely feels like a new era is beginning, one that's going to be full of challenges and surprises.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
Allegations, political maneuvering, a new bathroom rule, and a president who's clearly not afraid to make waves. Let's bring back our experts, Curbelo and Cross, and see what they make of all this.
Sounds good. I'm eager to hear their take on this.
So they both acknowledge that Trump has a lot of political capital coming off his election win. But they're also concerned about how quickly he seems to be spending it on pushing through these controversial nominees.
I see what they mean. It's like he's using it all up at once.
Right. And they seem to agree that this aggressive approach could backfire, especially if he doesn't have enough support from his own party.
It's almost like he's burning bridges before he's even had a chance to build them.
Exactly. And that raises the question of whether this is a sustainable approach in the long run. Can he really keep governing this way without alienating too many people?
It's a risky strategy for sure.
All right, so we've got these contentious cabinet picks, a new bathroom rule that's stirring up debate, and a president who's definitely not afraid to shake things up. What does this all mean for you, our listener?
I think the key takeaway here is that we're heading into uncharted territory with this new administration. Trump is unlike any president we've seen before, and his willingness to challenge norms is creating a lot of uncertainty.
It's certainly a wild ride, and as we continue this deep dive, we'll explore these topics further and see what other insights we can glean from these NBC Nightly News segments. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dig even deeper into the potential consequences of these political power plays.
It seems like there's always something new happening in Washington, And speaking of new developments, our sources at NBC Nightly News, they dug up some more information about this Matt Gaetz situation.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, remember those allegations we were talking about? Turns out the Justice Department actually already looked into them.
They did.
Yeah, they even conducted a full investigation, but in the end, they decided not to file any charges.
So if they already investigated it and didn't find enough to press charges, why is everyone still making such a big deal out of it?
Well, that's the thing. Senate Democrats, they're not satisfied with the Justice Department's decision. They're saying, we want to see all the details. We want the full FBI file on Gaetz.
Wow. So they're not taking the Justice Department's word for it.
Not at all. They want to dig deeper. And, it does make you wonder if maybe there were some political considerations at play in the Justice Department's decision.
Yeah, the Attorney General is a pretty powerful position. They oversee the entire Justice Department. So it makes sense that the Senate would want to be extra careful.
Absolutely. They have a duty to thoroughly vet anyone who's nominated for such an important role, especially when there are serious allegations involved.
Right. So this request for the FBI file, it's not just about Gaetz. It's about making sure that there's transparency and accountability in the nomination process.
Exactly. And, this whole situation, it could really strain Trump's relationship with the Senate. If they feel like he's trying to force through a nominee without proper scrutiny, it's not going to go over well.
Right. Could make it much harder for him to get anything done.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balance of power,
Yeah.
And the Senate has a responsibility to provide those checks and balances.
And let's not forget Senator Susan Collins. Even she, a Republican, expressed concerns about Gaetz's nomination.
Yeah, that was a pretty big deal. She doesn't usually break with her party like that.
Exactly. So it seems like the tide might be turning against Gaetz even within his own party.
Carlos Curbelo, our NBC News political analyst, he's predicting that if enough Republican senators come out against Gaetz, Trump will have no choice but to withdraw the nomination.
Wow, that would be a huge embarrassment for Trump.
Definitely a sign that he can't just do whatever he wants, even with a fresh election win.
Before we move on, I want to touch on something that both Curbelo and Cross brought up. They seem to think that these controversial picks, Gaetz and Buttigieg, are part of a larger strategy on Trump's part.
A strategy like what?
Well, they're suggesting that he's not just choosing people to fill these positions, he's picking people who will help him advance a specific agenda.
Interesting. So it's not just about qualifications or experience, it's about pushing a particular ideology.
That's what they seem to think. And it raises a lot of questions. What exactly is he trying to achieve with these picks? Is he just trying to appeal to his base, or is there something more going on?
It's definitely something to keep an eye on and to think about, the potential long-term consequences of this approach.
For sure. Now, let's shift our focus back to the House of Representatives and this whole controversy over the new bathroom rule.
Right. That was a big story, too.
Yeah, it's a really sensitive issue, especially because it seems to be targeting Sarah McBride, the first openly transgender woman in Congress.
And it's causing a lot of division. Some people are arguing that it's necessary to protect women's privacy and safety, while others are saying it's discriminatory and harmful to transgender individuals.
Right, and House Speaker Mike Johnson is trying to find a middle ground. He's called for respect for all members, but it's a really tough situation to navigate.
It is. These cultural issues, they tend to be very polarizing.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that even something like a bathroom rule can have a big impact on people's lives and on the political climate.
Definitely, it's about more than just bathrooms. It's about inclusivity and equality and the kind of society we want to create.
So we've got these contentious cabinet picks, a new bathroom rule that's stirring up controversy, and a president who seems determined to shake things up.
It's going to be an interesting 4 years, to say the least.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, it's important to remember that these aren't just abstract political debates. They have real consequences for real people.
Right. And it's up to all of us to stay informed and engaged and to make our voices heard.
Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll explore the potential long-term implications of these events and what they might mean for the future of American politics. So as we wrap up our look at the start of Trump's presidency, it's pretty clear that he's not shying away from controversy.
Not at all. He's definitely willing to use all the political capital he has to get what he wants.
And that might work in the short term, get some of these nominees through. But what about the long game? What are the potential consequences of this kind of aggressive approach?
That's the big question, isn't it? He might be winning some battles, but is he going to lose the war?
Exactly. And, both Curbelo and Cross, our political analysts, they expressed some serious concerns about the lasting impact of these decisions.
They did, didn't they? Especially when it comes to his relationship with the Senate.
Right. They're worried that he's going to alienate potential allies and make it even harder to pass legislation down the line.
It's like he's burning bridges before he's even built them.
Exactly. And if you can't work with Congress effectively, you're not going to get very far as president.
That's for sure. And, it's not just about his cabinet picks either, this bathroom rule controversy. That's another example of how his actions could have far-reaching consequences.
Right. It's not just about bathrooms. It's about transgender representation in politics. It's about the rights of marginalized groups.
Exactly. And the way this whole thing has unfolded, it sends a really concerning message to the LGBTQ plus community.
It does. Raises questions about whether this is truly about protecting women's privacy or if it's just a political tactic to appeal to certain voters.
And, this debate is not going away anytime soon. It's only going to intensify and potentially lead to even more division and polarization.
It's a reminder that every decision, every policy, every statement, it all has an impact. And we need to be mindful of the long-term consequences.
We do. We can't just focus on the immediate wins. We have to think about the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what can we do? What can our listeners do to stay informed and engaged and maybe even make a difference in all of this?
Well, I think the most important thing is to be an active participant. Don't just passively consume the news. Be critical. Think for yourself. Seek out diverse perspectives.
Right. Don't just stay in your echo chamber. Get out there and talk to people who disagree with you.
Exactly. And hold your elected officials accountable. Let them know what you think, what you care about, and don't be afraid to challenge them.
And remember, you have a voice.
Yeah.
Every vote, every letter, every conversation, it all matters.
It does. We all have a role to play in shaping the future we want to see.
So we've covered a lot in this deep dive. Allegations, controversial nominations, political maneuvering culture wars, and the fight for equality.
It's a lot to process, that's for sure.
It is. But it's important to stay informed and to stay engaged because the decisions being made in Washington, they affect all of us.
They do, and the choices we make today will shape the world of tomorrow.
We want to thank you for joining us on this journey, and we hope it's giving you some food for thought.
We hope it's inspired you to keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep fighting for the future you believe in.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.